Our program continues. Thank you for staying in the room. I'm getting my steps in today. I feel like I've walked 2 miles just going up and down the steps, but for a very good cause. So we are talking about, what does livability mean to us? Everybody will have a very different answer. But for the citizen of the future, our high-level roundtable is really going to focus on that and unpack it. You have such a highly qualified chair, Dr. Orna Rosenfeld. She's an urban strategist. She's a housing expert. She's a global advisor, an author, a social impact advisor, a global advisor to many major institutions around the world. She's come on stage now because I have to stop with her CV so she can actually do the high-level roundtable. Dr. Rosenfeld, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mayor, please take a seat.
Of course, thank you.
So welcome to this session of redefining livability for the citizens of tomorrow.
Thank you.
What happens to our cities over the next 30 years will determine the well-being of the world's projected 11 billion people. And I believe that livability and inclusions are the key to this future. Livability and inclusion are threads that run through global, international, and national policies. However, these policies do not matter if they are not implemented. And then it comes to the cities. Cities must strive to leave no one behind. As global inequalities intensify, cities have the potential to become sanctuaries where all citizens are given equal opportunities. This starts with forward-thinking, bold, decisive local policy planning, most importantly, its implementation. This section explores how cities can evolve to meet their residents' diverse needs all around the world and foster the sense of belonging to all. And to this end, we have the most distinguished panel today. His Excellency Gobind Singh Dio, the Minister of Digital for Malaysia, tasked with overseeing the country's digital transformation. He was Minister for Communication and Multimedia between 2018 and 2020. He is also well known for being Malaysia's leading criminal constitutional human rights lawyer. All that before you took the seat as the minister. Thank you very much, His Excellency. Mayor LaToya Cantrell, the New Orleans first woman mayor in 300-year history. I think that
Don't remind me.
I have some more things. So her work is dedicated to creating a more equitable city for all residents. Under her leadership, the city secured funding for infrastructure, improved public health during pandemic, and revitalized the long-abandoned Six Flags site, a site that was abandoned for 16 years due to the devastation caused by Katrina. And all that to boost economic opportunities for all in her city. In her second term, she remains committed to public safety, affordable housing, and enhancing quality of life for everybody in New Orleans. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
And now to the global head of cities at the KPMG, Mrs. Sarah Varghese. Sarah is an international city strategist, urban designer, and architect with over 25 years of global experience in Australia, Middle East, UK, and India. She is a city practitioner with experience in planning, designing, and delivering major city-shaping projects involving complex stakeholder management, tourism, and sustainability strategy. Thank you for being here with us today. And last but certainly not least, the CEO of New Murabba, Mr. Michael Dyke. New Murabba is a subsidiary of Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, and Mr. Michael brings over 35 years of experience in leading large-scale business enterprises and projects around multiple sectors and geographies. His previous role include CEO of major project at Balfour Beatty, where he delivered complex projects and shaped infrastructure, energy, construction, and real estate landscapes. Thank you very much for being with us today. So I think that I would like to start this conversation by giving everybody here an opportunity to present to you what is it that they are delivering in their own jurisdiction, in their own country, in their own city, in their companies around the world. Your Excellency, I would like to start with you. What is it that is the leading mission that you are leading at this moment today?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Honour Rosenfield. I think if we look at where it is we have come today, we will all recognize the fact that we have traveled very far in terms of technological development. And this technology has pivoted us in the way we think, the way we live, and I think where governments approach how they're going to regulate their countries. Now in 2018, when I was Minister of Communications and Multimedia, we were talking about connectivity. And the idea at that point in time was to make sure that everyone had access to connectivity. Connectivity that was affordable, connectivity that was of high quality, and I think that was what we thought would empower our people. That if you could not bring all of your people to the global stage, you put connectivity in their hands and you bring the world to them. So that was the thinking behind it at that point of time. So I convinced my government to move aggressively in that area. We came up with a national plan. Significant funds put aside, and subsequently we managed to connect the country as far as we possibly could. Then we were hit by COVID, and during COVID, I think we saw the benefit of what it is we did, because whilst people had to remain at home and work from home, they were able to use that connectivity to carry on with their lives, although in a limited sense from what it is we used to do before. But nevertheless, they were able to connect, they were able to get on with their daily lives, and to a certain extent, many businesses were able to carry on. So from there, of course, I became minister again 10 months ago, a new ministry in Malaysia, Ministry of Digital, with the Prime Minister very actively pursuing this whole agenda of digital transformation. But when we speak about digital transformation, there's certain angles, there's certain areas that we have to focus on. Number one, we've got to make sure that we understand what the technology is today and where it is we are going to have to look at in the years ahead. So in other words, we have to prepare the country in the sense of infrastructure. We've got to make sure that our country is prepared for new technology. You've got AI, you've got Gen AI, you've got quantum after this. So we've got to start that process of thinking, and governments have to make sure that they prepare infrastructure that their people can use to fully optimize technology available to them moving ahead. The second pillar, of course, revolves around security. If you're going to ask people to move on to platforms that you have, be it through smart city initiatives or otherwise, you've got to convince them those platforms are safe. So cybersecurity becomes a key issue. You've got to tell them that you're looking at critical network information infrastructure. There is regulation to ensure that they have robust and resilient systems in them, and they're safe. In addition to that, you've got to make sure that they also convince that when they use these platforms, their data is safe. So personal data is something that is key. But ultimately, Ona, you have the best infrastructure in the world, and it's safe, and everyone wants to use it. But it is of no use if people don't have the talent necessary for them to adopt it. So the third area that we're looking at is on how it is we can ensure that we're able to get as many people on board in the sense of encouraging them to adopt, teaching them how this technology will change their lives, and making this most important point, as I started off earlier, right? Looking at where we have come from and where we are today, the significant change and impact that technology has brought to the lives of so many people. We have to recognize that in the next 10 years and moving ahead therefrom, technology is going to disrupt us even more. We must be ready for it. A government has that responsibility, and as far as I'm concerned, my ministry and I, we are looking right at that now, and we hope to build an ecosystem that will be able to support our people in the years ahead, of course, living with this new digital technology of ours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opening statement. And I think that we will move now to a completely different reality, and that of the New Orleans. What is your pitch, Mayor?
Well, what I will say, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. For the city of New Orleans, and really thinking about how far we've come, even since Hurricane Katrina, and the impacts of a city demographically and socially, economically, that really needed investment in. So focusing on the resiliency in terms of our built environment, learning how to live better with water, making sure that we're focusing on drainage and infrastructure as a whole, even as it relates to drinking water, drainage water, wastewater, and the like. Technology, no doubt about it, but through the lens of public health, because everything touches it. But we have to ensure that our people of the city are invested in as well. So from a holistic perspective, so not just, again, that hard, that gray, that blue, and that green, but also in terms of workforce development and training our people up for the future so that they can sustain themselves in how we're investing in our infrastructure, but they're a part of that. Even, the city of New Orleans is I would say culture is who we are. We are a world-class city, the most Afrocentric in the United States of America. So instead of looking at our folks to market them, we're investing in our culture so that it can be preserved over generations. And so I feel that we have a real responsibility in being intentional about how we meet our people where they are, and from housing, to education, from mental health, public safety, everything touches public health. And we're wanting to, again, be intentional about how we invest holistically so that families and people can continue to be in that city for generations to come. It happens at the local level. We understand that our first responders are your neighbors themselves, and so you're wanting to build opportunities where people live so that they can be connected to one another, but also connected to the city that is the lifeline, I would say, not only of the state of Louisiana, but is a global city as well.
One little question before I move on. What is the greatest strength of New Orleans in terms of livability and inclusion?
Well, the greatest strength of New Orleans it's our people.
Yeah.
And making sure that we have learned, taking on lessons that are learned. And because of that, the voice of the people have been embedded in the implementation of our infrastructure. So again, people are infrastructure too, but being on the front lines of climate that has already changed, we have to adapt. And not just from living with water, but also we've seen extreme heat. That's something that we're having to deal with as well, tornadoes and the like. So from that holistic perspective, it's really investing in our people. People, that's our strength, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mayor. And moving on now to KPMG, Global Head of Cities. Can you tell us a little bit about your work today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ona. Good afternoon, everybody. I am KPMG's Global Head of Cities, and what does that mean? It means that I get to work with our city colleagues all over the world, 5,000 plus people, reimagining the future of livability in cities. We don't have the answers, but we try every day to push ourselves, push the boundaries in terms of solving or helping each other solve the big problems of cities, not just from a practitioner level, but most of us here in this room live in a city. By 2050, 70% of us will be living in a city, so this discussion is very timely.
Sure.
I mean, I'll give you some examples of the kind of things we're doing around the globe. The Intelligent Cities Challenge that we're helping the European Commission with, where we're bringing together green and digital together in a local partnership model, which helps the future of cities in a green and a digital way. We are preparing a biophilic design strategy for the state of Victoria in Australia, where we're looking at how can we design with nature in mind so that our mental health and well-being is improved, and thereby livability. We're helping our clients across the globe in the Net Zero Urban program, which is a program that helps our city clients decarbonize. It's a word we use quite loosely, but it's quite a challenge, and we need a very detailed roadmap with appropriate funding to be able to achieve that. So that is very important to us, and at the heart of what we do is helping our clients achieve sustainable development goals. So from every front, from the way we live, work, and play in our cities, we look at it from different angles and making sure that the voice of our communities is heard, the local voice is heard in the shaping of the cities, because cities are a phenomenon and it's made up of all of us, and all of our diverse voices need to be heard in the shaping of the future of the city. So we're very focused on how can we create inclusive cities for the future. Thank you, Anna.
Fantastic. And I just, little question here. What are the main challenges in city livability? You work around the world. What is the main challenge?
Well, there's common challenges that we see around the globe, such as rapid urbanization, a lack of housing supply, lack of jobs in the local area, long commutes, traffic congestion, our ability to respond to pandemics and climate events, also social inequality, gentrification, and a lot of the world also faces water scarcity, for example, and a lack of access to health and educational opportunities. It's not just the quantum, but it's also the quality and the access. How quickly can you access these things? And how stable is your city? Environmentally, geopolitically, the stability matters a lot. So it's a whole range of factors. And although each city faces a kind of a different challenge, their top three challenges might be different, but across the globe we see these trends. And I think it's not the job of one single country or practitioner to solve it, and that's why we are all here, right, in this Big Cities event, to discuss and debate this topic. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to a new city of Murabba, Michael Dyke, the CEO of the new city. Could you tell us a little bit about your work recently, livability, inclusion? How does that factor in the new city development?
Of course, and good afternoon, everyone. So New Murabba is a development company with a large technology play. We're very fortunate to be positioned in the northwest part of Riyadh, which is already an amazing capital city, but equally, like most cities in the world, is contemplating population growth. So New Murabba will become the world's largest modern downtown, but it's built on a greenfield site, which is an amazing opportunity, which often when you have existing cities, you're trying to think about how to weave new technology into the existing fabric and infrastructure, and that can often be a problem retrofitting. Our dilemma and our challenge and our opportunity is to actually start with a blank sheet of paper and ultimately to conceive and ultimately to develop and to create a place which is born smart. So that's the context. I think in terms of where we are right now, we have to create a place where people want to live, work, and play. We have to have a place which has a really healthy balance of green space, dedicated space for mobility, and let's say mobility as to how people will want to be rather than maybe how they have been in the past. So what I mean by that is a lot of places to get recreation, a lot of places to walk, to actually cycle, to run, to jog, and that kind of stuff. And also we have to introduce into this city, nonetheless, the most modern technology to future-proof it for generations to come, whilst introducing something new for Riyadh, given the fact that today Riyadh has been a very carefully controlled, well-developed and well-thought-through city, but has a low density and a low rise. And being a modern downtown, we have to introduce mid and high-rise living, whilst also doing that, wrapping around in the context of parks and the like. I think to your second question, the reality is we must deal with the fact that we have to create a place where people feel safe and well. We have to create a place where people feel included, not isolated, as it were. We have to create a place also, given the fact that for 3 months of the year, it is very hot in Riyadh, where people can get shade, where people can get privacy, but also can feel part of community. So it's a wonderful challenge to have, and I'll explain more.
Thank you very much. Yourself, as well as Excellency, already answered the questions I had for you. So I think that we're going to move to our next bit. And I think that what we can all feel here is that we're speaking about two concepts, livability, we're speaking about inclusion, but every single of our distinguished speakers had their own specific, very unique point of view on it. So I think that this begs the question, what, in your view, are the key factors that define livability and inclusion? What do we mean when we say livability and inclusion? Sarah, would you like to take that one on? It's a theoretical one.
No, absolutely. I mean, I touched upon a few points earlier, but livability speaks to everyone differently. But there's some fundamental things I believe that are ingredients of a livable city. One is how walkable is it? How human is the city? You know, is it walkable? Does it prioritize humans over cars? Is it connected? Are you able to move from A to B easily without thinking about it, without taking your car, ideally? How much access do you have to parks and open spaces? Is it within walking distance? And as Mike said earlier, in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, for example, we have over 50 degrees 3 to 4 months, 3 months of the year. And so the 15-minute walkability doesn't work, so maybe 5 minutes. But even so, we need to plan for it ahead. The strategic planning and the robust planning of the city is very important to make sure that we have shaded walkways, that we have climate-responsive design. It's not undoable. It's important to think about these things. How physically and digitally connected are we? You know, are we connecting our communities well, or is the city dead at night because people come to work and then leave? So is it a 24-hour city? Is it a 12-month city where seasonality is minimized? Because the most successful cities, we're sitting in one, Barcelona, where the mixed uses is a very important consideration, where you have a mix of uses and the city is alive through the year rather than dead at night, where some cities in the world are. Yeah. So there's a lot of considerations that go into the livability aspects of a city.
Absolutely. Maybe some aspects from other parts of the world on that one?
Well, if I
Your
can just
Excellency?
chime into that, I agree with what Sarah has said. But I think from a government perspective and from a governance perspective, we engage a lot with the industry, and they tell us about how it is. They have solutions that can solve problems for people, give them greater access to fundamental services, access to health services, to education, and what have you not. These are discussions that are well and good. And I think this is something that's to be encouraged. In fact, here we have similar conversations, and out here you go to most of the booths and they'll tell you what it is they can do to make things easier for people as we go along. But from a government perspective, we've got to make sure that there are policies that are put in place, policies that clearly define what it is we expect technology to do for our people moving ahead. And when we do this, the discussion will also encompass how it is you look at risks and challenges that these technological advancements will bring. Now, if you have those policies in place, then there will be this whole process of you following through with the plan and getting things done. Because otherwise the conversations just remain conversations. So I think the real challenge is how do you actually define what livability is in a city, given the circumstances that you have. Because different countries will have different challenges. Resources may be scarce in different parts of the world. In the federal capital, right, the government is probably going to be more inclined to spend a lot more money because it becomes a center of work and attraction and that of your country. But moving out to the more rural areas, you're not just going to have a lack of funds, you're also going to have a lack of initiative on part of the big companies to go there and to get things done. So it's really a question of us understanding what we want to achieve with livability, and how it is we design policies that actually see these cities come into being. Now the reason I say this is because as you travel, and I think most of you here in the room have traveled far, you would see quite clearly a divide. Different countries with different challenges. I come from Malaysia, and in Malaysia, of course, we operate in the ASEAN region, and even there, with the ASEAN group of countries coming together, we still see that some of them have a lot more to do and a lot further to go ahead, whereas some are further in front. So it's a question of how governments can define policies for their countries, and how it is they can make sure that those policies are followed through. And subsequently, I think it's also a question of how it is they can ensure that they can bring these policies forward regionally and then subsequently try and connect globally to see what the world defines as livability when it comes to smart cities and so on and so forth. So I think there's a need for us to ensure that these discussions are crystallized, and in doing that, we ensure that the benefit and risk side of it is taken care of. It's difficult, but I think it's achievable.
Yes.
But livability as well, I think you have to think about, for me, is that I want my people to be able to live in their city. And so be connected to diversifying our economy and therefore workforce development, training them up to be connected to technology and bioscience and get off of just being a hospitality city, making sure that they can earn wages that are appropriate with the investments that you're making. For example, whether that's green infrastructure, learning again how to live with water, but you need your workforce to be able to maintain your bioswales and the like. Housing, solar for all. You want those trained to be able to provide the services needed to ensure that that household can live in its city. So its livability speaks to the heart of any city, which it's the people.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it's the people.
Absolutely, yes. Michael, I think that somebody wanted to give a mayor the applause on this. Go for it. Let's go. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And Michael, what is, from your perspective, new city, definition of livability and inclusion? What do you bring when you have to start it from tabula rasa?
So without repeating a lot of what's been said, in terms of the mix of space for people to get recreation and just to exercise and to just breathe, as well as be part of a vibrant city is something that you have to balance finely. I actually think people need to feel proud about their place.
Yeah.
There's enormous pride, in terms of where you live, where you physically exist, and we want to create somewhere people feel they can relate to and they can feel proud about. But one of the things that I do think we all struggle with to a greater or lesser extent, and we have the chance at Murabba to deal with at source, is for people's ability to have information made available to them to make choices, rather than stand in long queues, sit in congestion or otherwise, and basically the whole wayfinding of the city needs to be designed in its source. So that, I think, is going to be one area where we have a massive opportunity, because like everything in life, if we have awareness and visibility, we can exercise choice and we can enjoy our city in whichever way we wish. The worst thing is when you're standing somewhere and you can't move around and you think, if only I had that information. So for us, about using technology to inform people, because everyone's pretty tech savvy with their cell phones these days, so we need to push that information to them and create choice.
Thank you very much. And now moving to something that, we are talking about very, very often in these arenas, which is community engagement. So what roles can community engagement play in shaping forward-thinking policies for future cities, Your Excellency?
Well, I think as the mayor correctly said early on, we've got to focus on the people. Ultimately, it's about building communities in which people are able to live, having access to basic amenities, being able to be proud and happy with the environment in which they have to operate on a daily basis. Ultimately, as they grow in their life, the environment in which they build themselves becomes key to them. So we have to understand that when it comes to us thinking about what to do next, it's important for us to consider the living experiences of the people in particular communities, the problems that they face depending on where they are, because different people face different challenges in different places and different parts of the world. So I think there's a need for us to focus on what their needs are.
Yeah,
and the only way we can do that is to ensure that we engage with them and of course take suggestions from them as to what it is they think we should be doing, understanding that the problems that they have faced, which can be resolved with technology, should be resolved with technology as soon as possible, building the structures that are going to be able to do that, and ensuring that they're sustainable, as I said earlier. So when you create an environment like that where you get feedback from the community, they tell you what the problems are, what they think you should be doing, and you reciprocating with as much as you possibly can, using the resources as government, building, be it regulations, legislation. It really comes back to you building a community that becomes strong by themselves, using technology. They will be able to then tell you what they think you should be doing next. In fact, they may form the industry, and they may even start operating on their own and building ecosystems around them, depending on the strengths that they have. And I think we all have a lot to learn from that. So it's a learning process, but from a government point of view, again, it's essential for us to connect with the community, understand what their needs are, and look to see how it is we can solve those problems. And we've got to move fast, because technology doesn't wait for anyone.
Yes.
And we really have to start cracking on it.
Absolutely. Mayor, you have done a colossal work in this area, I think, in community engagement. So
Well,
why don't you?
Well, I think that, the world's greatest experts on where they live are the people who live in their cities and in their neighborhoods. And absolutely, as His Excellency has mentioned, that you do have to listen. It starts there. They know what they need. And especially, for example, when you're responding to a disaster, your first responders, again, they're your neighbors. And so, for example, Feed the Second Line grew from residents who are saying, listen, when the lights go down, when we lose power for 2 weeks, we have restaurants in our community. Where does that food go? So they created, Feed the Second Line, Get Lit, Stay Lit, meaning that we built out restaurants that have generated power when the lights go down, and you can cook that food. And that food is available to the community. That's that Feed the Second Line. Or lighthouses, for example, are faith-based organizations in community. They become lighthouses when the grid goes down. Well, they're invested in so that they stay lit, so that people know where to go to get information, share information, so that they can, again, build one another up. So even from youth, listening to your young people, hey, listening to mine, they said, hey, mental health services are what we need. Well, we took $10 million over a 3-year period. Now young people that are attending public school in the city of New Orleans have access to mental health or behavioral health services whenever they need them. So it's a maternal health. Again, listening to your people, putting money in there. When babies go home, that family goes home, after that first week, they're getting visited by a registered nurse. So again, the solutions come from the people that we serve. Absolutely. We just have to be willing to listen and activate resources, again, to meet them where they are, because again, we're only as good as our people, and we're definitely stronger together.
I know that your companies have done a lot of work in advising on this matter, so I will pass to a more challenging question here. What role does partnership play in the success of your initiatives, and what lessons can be applied elsewhere? Partnership in lifting the city off the ground, off the desert in your case.
I think partnerships are crucial to everything that we do. We have certainly in our new city 3 primary types of partnerships. One is we need industrial partnerships who can actually work with us to bring about the new city itself in terms of infrastructure, assets, facilities, and amazing places. Secondly, we need to have technology partnerships, because I mentioned earlier that we're not only a real estate company, but we have some eye-watering technology inside the centerpiece, which is the world's largest structure ever known to man or woman. And we have to activate the whole of that with technology that exists today, but at commercial scale, coping with the volume of people needs to be accelerated. So the only way we can do that is by relying upon brilliant engineering with global partners who are experts in technology to ensure that that is going to be foolproof by the time we go live. And then thirdly, we have the more classic real estate development partnerships, whether that be investors purely in asset classes, whether it be people or organizations working with us as sub-developers through partnerships there, or even as joint ventures in some kind of mode to actually develop out spaces. But I think just wrapped around those 3 primary things, and it's been said very well by the Mayor about community. Actually, we have to have community partnerships because that's the stuff that provides the magic that brings places to life. Otherwise, you can have the coolest looking city in the world, but if you don't have people feeling like they own it and they've been part of it, then therein lies the challenge. So we work very closely with multiple stakeholders, and one I would call out is a design review panel that we work closely with, and they're at the very beginning of the journey with us to make sure that the places that we create and those little sort of cut-throughs, those rabbit holes, and all the things that you know and take for granted in cities of old, those exist, and they've been thought through rather than just happen by accident. So partnerships are vital to everything that we do.
Absolutely. Sarah, would you care to add to this? I know that you work around the world, large-scale development projects.
Absolutely. Well, partnerships are easier said than done, but very critical, right? Where just adding on to Mike's point about the criticality of it, we're currently delivering a large visioning and tourism strategy for the region of Asir in the southwest of Saudi Arabia. It's a 10,000 square kilometer province, the area of the study, with multiple tribes, communities, villages, stakeholders involved, all levels of government. We, KPMG consultants, we think we know everything, but we don't, right? We prepared some strategic plans, and then we engaged with the local community with the support of the Prince of Asir, and we realized that we had missed a lot of stuff, the local stories, the history, the culture, the old souks, and so we are now in the process of amending our plans to make sure that all of that nuance, the history, the heritage, is captured in our plans because it's the future of a region we're talking about. And so the buy-in from community and the partnership model is very important. And some of them are heritage villages. There are 3,000 sites in this province of heritage significance, and many of them are heritage villages where people actually live. So we are looking at a model now where we are involving the local community and industry in the rebuilding of these historic villages, and also looking at profit sharing with the local community. So this is like really exciting stuff because we are pushing ourselves to do this, and we're extending the project timeline in order to absorb and make sure that the diverse voices are heard. But it's definitely critical to the success of the project and the region. So I just wanted to give that example, adding on to Mike.
I think that I could stay here for many more hours and speak with you. And I think that moving, unfortunately, toward the end of our session, I would like to ask one question to all of you. What are the greatest challenges that you have faced in the space of livability and inclusion, and what is your vision for the future? What is it that you would like our audience to bring home from this session today?
Ona, if I may just take it from where Sarah and Michael left off earlier on partnerships. I think my experience has shown that partnerships can be used to build strengths.
Right.
At the same time, we can also look at partnerships to solve weaknesses that exist in certain areas which do not attract interest. So we have to understand that partnerships will exist, but if there is something that motivates two or more people to work together, and a lot of the time, that comes back to the commercial side of it. But there also exists a lot of areas where people can actually work together to solve problems, but there is no benefit to them. But by doing that, they will solve larger issues, and of course, the impact that will have on communities are huge. So we have to start looking at partnerships from different perspectives. Partnerships in how it is they help to build institutions, ecosystems, which I completely agree with. From a government perspective, I push that, and I certainly will continue to do that. But there's also this area that we should understand exists, and I call it the disconnect. The disconnect is where we have large sections of society who know that technology exists. They know that technology can solve problems, and they discuss it all the time. They speak about it. It's fashionable, but they really do not adopt. They do not actually take that step and use it to solve their problem. So the challenge has always been how we can ensure that no one is left behind. Because as the mayor said earlier, I mean, ultimately it comes back to the people, but the people are there are many types of people, many different types of people. All of us here speak about upskilling and reskilling, for example, Mayor. And we say that if technology comes and takes away your job, don't worry, because we can tell people that we'll upskill and reskill them.
That's it.
But we have to also understand that it's not necessarily the case that people out there would want to be upskilled and reskilled, because you spend your whole life in a particular line. You went to university, to school, you've learned the subject, then you've worked all your life to take yourself to that particular level in your game, and suddenly your government comes and says to you, you're out of a job, but don't worry, we're going to reskill you. Right? People are going to say, look, I don't want to be reskilled, right? You make sure that my job is safe, otherwise I'm going to vote you out. So this is the problem, and that divide to me is very, very, it's of great concern to me, because what can happen, and if you look at how it is, even the technology that we look at for smart cities, this is technology that has existed for some time now. But it's going to change with generative AI. So how does generative AI impact on it? And you can actually have a section of society which decides that they do not want to adopt. So you might reach a time where you have in one group of people two different types of communities. One that is actually much further ahead because they adopt technology, and the other that is much further behind simply because they have decided they do not want to. So the challenge is, how do you actually ensure that everyone comes on board, everyone is educated, everyone has access to this information, so that you can ensure that this benefit that you see from technology is equally distributed. And I think that's something that we need to start thinking about now, because while technology moves very, very quickly and governments spend a lot of money building infrastructure, as I said earlier, I think you've got to think about how it is ultimately. It all comes back to you being able to roll out services that will help everyone, but that's the challenge.
Yes.
You can do your part, but what do you do if it's not reciprocated on the other side? Then you will have one section of society that you have to deal with nevertheless. So I'm just pointing out that when we talk about partnerships, there are many different angles to it, and I think that to answer your question, if you ask me what one of the great challenges are, that's one side of it.
And what would be your vision for the future from this? Very briefly, maybe if we don't have the answer, maybe sometimes the question is the more important to ask, as you did, than to give it an answer. Your vision for the future in one sentence, what would it be?
We must ensure that we must push for adoption and ensure that everyone understands that technology is something that they need to understand, they need to use in order to live in tomorrow's world. That's the reality of it. And as government, as industry, as communities, we have this joint responsibility to go out there and tell people that it's easy for them to use. Michael earlier made the point that all of us are tech savvy. Many of us here have smartphones in the room. Many of us speak about ChatGPT, but if I asked you that real question now, some of you haven't used it. And it's okay. It's okay if you haven't used it, right? Just turn right next to the person sitting next to you and ask him how to use it. And when you use it and you see what it can do, then you realize how powerful it is. And you realize that if you do not actually use it and adopt it, then you're going to be a lot further behind than the person sitting next to you just in the next couple of days, if not months or years to come. So, that's what I think should be done.
Thank you very much. I think we have just a little bit of time for everyone to tell us about their own vision for the future. What is your vision for the future for the livability and inclusion to actually prevail through international and national policies and in local policies? Because we see a lot of interest from many different dimensions, from digital obviously, but also housing, energy. We have a proliferation of the policies where there is an interest in livability inclusion. So how do we go forward? What is your vision for the future? What is the most important thing?
Listening, bottom line is it's listening and finding the balance. And a part of that also is the challenge. The challenge meaning that, you have to bring people along, and sometimes kicking and screaming. It's true. So, for example, whether there's a bike paths, right? Finding the balance. Some want them, right? We know that it's tied to mobility, getting people to and from, reducing carbon emissions, all these things, and we need to keep and make sure that they're safe, bike paths. But then you have the other side, remove the bike path. So the balance is, one, demonstrating that it's necessary, we need to move forward, as well as not removing bike paths. Those are legitimate things that I'm having to deal with in my city. Creating green infrastructure, holding water, freeing up water from going directly into the drains. Well, when we do the infrastructure project, it's a disruptor, meaning you're disrupting the built environment where people live. And so while you're doing the work and you're hearing the noise, you have to keep doing the work. And then your people see, once it's completed, how their quality of life has been impacted. Water isn't getting into their homes any longer. Water isn't going into their businesses. But doing the work, you got to block out the noise. Even when you talk about technology and bioinnovation and grooming your residents for jobs of the future, which are right now. Well, some folks feel like, these jobs aren't for me. It is. Yeah. So just as you pitch that dessert or pitch that drink, you can learn how to do tech sales. But the thing is, sometimes people believe that it's not for them, but it is for them. And you need to be connected to that opportunity, because we're not going back. We have to go forward, but you want to bring your people along.
Yes.
Sometimes kicking and screaming.
That's
Absolutely.
Sarah, Michael, would you like to add something to this? What is your vision
Yes.
from your perspective?
I mean, Prime Minister and Mayor, respective Mayor have added a lot of valuable points, but I just want to add that I think livable cities are created through deliberate and robust strategic urban planning, adopting a sustainability mindset, a circular economy mindset, creating cities that are connected physically and also digitally, and four, that are inclusive. And when I say inclusive, I mean it looks at housing for all realms of society, all economic realms of society, of different family types, singles, people with families, and different types of housing. They should be accessible, and you shouldn't have to travel, 2 hours to get to your job, to your house, etc. So that equity is important, but also a city that caters for women, children, mothers with prams, people with mobility impairments, the youth. We forget the youth in all of our community engagement sessions. The youth are forgotten. There's nothing for them to do, and things like this. So it's very important that we create and think about cities that are deliberately inclusive. And at the end of the day, it's very important to listen to the voices of our stakeholders and our communities, genuine listening, real-time listening, and making sure that we listen and respond, not just pretend to listen, but actually listen. And set the city up so that everyone feels included and listened to. So that's, I think, very important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think places take decades, if not generations, to grow personalities and feel like home and feel like places where we're really comfortable living and working and playing. So in the context of our world at Murabba, our challenge is how do we accelerate that, but not just force the outcome. So many of the things have been said by the rest of the panel just now, but start at the end, be really clear by what it's going to feel like at the end, what it needs to be, what are the must-haves. So we call that the definition, and then go right back to the beginning and make sure we don't allow people to start designing, which takes us to a different place, but we spend more time on definition at the front end, because if we get definition right, and we can create the hard wires to the outcomes at the end, we can go very fast in physically creating assets and everything else. So I think for me, it's going to be absolutely about obsessing around the front end, defining the back end, and then forming those hard wires and connections. We get that bit right, and then you can accelerate the placemaking.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you very much. I think that as a concluding thought, I think that finally creating truly inclusive environment takes a planned effort, a clear intention and shared vision, but most importantly, concrete, long-term, scalable planning. Even if you'd have to take them kicking and screaming, that's in brackets, right?
It takes time.
But,
it takes time.
but most importantly, I think that maybe a question that we don't ask sufficiently is what is the common goal that connects us and why we are here together and where we want to go. And I think that these are the questions that Your Excellency and the Mayor actually asked. Why are we here together? Why and what we want to do. So with these thoughts, I would like to invite you to give a round of applause to our distinguished panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, speakers.
Thank you very much for being here, and hopefully see you in the next City Smart Expo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Orna. Thank you, speakers.
Okay.
I am handing over my MC duties to Ruth Gumbau at 3:25 so I can get ready for the World Smart City Awards. Has anybody in this space been to the Oscars? Yes, someone has been to the Oscars. This will be better than the Oscars at 6 p.m. in the main auditorium. But for now, our program continues at 3:25 with Ruth Gumbau.